Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Swarastatim Vyasam. Tato Jayamudirayat. Reading this morning 1110 Bhagavatam, celebrated verse. Prayena Payushakshabhya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Mandasa Mandamatayo Mandabhagya Yupadruta. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Upadruta, he, very disturbed. Purport, long purport. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. When the sages of Naimisharanya analyzed the state of affairs of the people in this age of Kali, they foresaw that men would live short lives. In Kali-yuga, the duration of life is shortened, not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, oversense gratification, overdependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. That's four things. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. Paragraph. The people of this age are also very lazy, not only materially, but in the matter of self realization. The human life is especially meant for self realization. That is to say, man should come to know what he is, what the world is, and what the supreme truth is. Human life is a means by which the living entity can end all the miseries of the hard struggle for life in material existence, and by which he can return to Godhead, his eternal home. But due to a bad system of education, men have no desire for self realization. Even if they come to know about it, they unfortunately become victims of misguided teachers. Paragraph. In this age of Kali, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of many different types of sense gratificatory diversions, such as, makes a long list, cinemas, sports, gambling, clubs, mundane libraries, bad associations, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and so on. Their minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties due to so many different engagements in this age. Many unscrupulous men manufacture their own religious faiths, which are not based on any revealed scripture. And very often, people who are addicted to sense gratification are attracted by such institutions. Consequently, in the name of religion, so many sinful acts are being carried on that the people in general have neither peace of mind nor health of body. The student brahmachari communities are no longer being maintained, and householders do not observe the rules and regulations for or of the grahastha ashram. Consequently, the so-called vanaprastha and sannyasis who come out of such grahastha ashram are easily deviated from the right rigid path. In the Kali-yuga, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with faithlessness. Men are no longer interested in spiritual values. Material sense gratification is now the standard of civilization. For the maintenance of such material civilizations, man has formed complex nations and communities, and there is a constant strain of hot and cold wars between these different groups. It has become very difficult, therefore, to raise the spiritual standard due to the present distorted values of human society. The sages of Naimisharanya are anxious to disentangle all fallen souls, and here they are seeking the remedy from Srila Sutta Goswami. This verse is a carryover from the previous two verses we discussed yesterday. The sages, Shonaka and others, sages, wanted to hear from Sutta Goswami the ultimate and absolute good for all living entities. Pretty high request. That's text 9. Please, therefore, Sutta, blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. So that was 9. This is 10. It's just a continuation. So part of their reason, I mean, even if it's not Kali Yuga, there's reason. But the reasons of Kali Yuga amplify the urgency and the importance. Because in the age of Kali, society is misdirected. Commonly, as in this purport, Prabhupada gestures towards the would-be brahmanas and the would-be kshatriyas. The leaders mislead. The educators miseducate. Miseducate meaning the educators don't teach the real purpose of life, the values of life, and how to fulfill the values of life. How to fulfill the values of life is presented within within the Vedas, and even for less spiritually inclined, more materially inclined persons, there's structures, Vedic structures, starting with varnashram. We discussed this yesterday. The self-realization. What is it called? Self-realization center, ashram, something like that. In chapter 22 of Madhya Lila, Lord Chaitanya is having his Sanatana Shiksha instructions to Sanatana Goswami, and there's a nice description. The totality of living entities, it's a pyramid, and then they all have bodies, and the bodies are of different species, and of the different species, some are in the human form, but those that are in the human form, they're not yet fully human. They're Dripada Pashus because they have no regulation. And then above the unregulated are the regulated. And what they're regulated by is the varnashram system. And the varnashram system is meant for two things: to fulfill people's needs. They have their psychophysical nature, and to fulfill their needs according to the codes of the Vedas. And the second is that the principle of varnashram is Vishnu is to be pleased. That's the principle. So material necessities are being fulfilled, propensities and necessities. Go back down again. There are those that don't follow varnashram, but they have some indication from the Vedas of how to get what they want. How to get what they want, meaning karma kanda yajnas. They're not necessarily following varnashram. They may or may not, but the not is they're not thinking the purpose is to satisfy Vishnu. The purpose is to get what they want. And to get what one wants, then karma kanda rituals to get what you want. However, with the karma kanda rituals, there's some um, benefit. The silver lining is recognition of higher authority. So I'm not an animal. I'm acknowledging there's some higher authority who, if I approach this higher authority, they may give me what I want. And the method to approach that higher authority to give me what I want is the Vedas. So the acknowledgement of the Vedas. I may not know at all what the purpose of the Vedas is other than to get what I want. But those persons may be regulated to some degree, at least when performing yajnas, to get what I want. So the desire tree, the kalpataru, fulfilling desires. Now back up again. Those who are followers of varnashram, according to consistently the writing of Srila Prabhupada, that's where human life begins. Before, the animals don't go to the Vedas to have rituals performed to fulfill their needs. So there's something in this in-between place. Anyway, back to varnashram. Because the point that Prabhupada made in this text 10 purport is the shortened life has much to do with the lack of regulation. Not regulation doesn't just mean how you use your time. Certainly that's a kind of regulation or a very important part of regulation. Like the regulation of rising early, the regulation of before you do anything, you make the body clean. Take a bath and brush your teeth. And then what do you do after that? There's regulation. And there are codes of the Vedas that help regulate everything so that a byproduct is that longer life and better health. It's not the necessarily the intention of a follower of the Vedas, although for some people it's an intention. It's not they're followers of the Vedas. They want a longer life. They want to be more healthy. And so they stay regulated according to codes that they understand will help them without necessarily reference to the Vedas. But the spiritual benefit, because we heard this yesterday also, when there's spiritual benefit, the ultimate and absolute good, when there's spiritual benefit, material benefit follows the spiritual well-being. Like a shadow follows the object that casts a shadow. If you want to move a shadow, you can't just move the shadow. You have to move the object that's casting the shadow. Similarly, material existence is a shadow. only of reality. And you want material well being, get spiritual well being. And the shadow like material existence will improve. Some people want that. Dharma for the purpose of artha. And the purpose of artha is kama. And when that doesn't really satisfy anymore, then moksha, let me out of here. Then, the invitation or the impetus for self realization. So back to text 10. Human society in the age of Kali lacks regulation in the matter of eating, cleanliness, etc., etc., the wholesomeness of one's occupation. And so energy gets sapped and the duration of life diminishes progressively. There are other contributing factors, but that's what Prabhupada is pointing to in this purport. And it's true. And so the sages, they're interested, back to the theme, the sages are interested in the welfare of all. They're already sages. They already have their welfare needs and interests and concerns looked after. It's not like they don't know. They know, but they're asking sutta to speak because that's what people that know want to hear topics they already know, confirming from Sutta Goswami the ultimate and absolute good. That's what they want for not just themselves, for the entire population, all living entities. Because when human society misbehaves, other living entities are impacted. And when human society acts properly, other living entities are impacted. So help the living entities in the human form of life become spiritually elevated, and the other forms of life will become benefited. So they're not unconcerned about other than human forms, but they're particularly concerned about the human form because of its position and its power to uplift or degrade the circumstances of other living entities. Now, again, there's other factors. Let's say, that, for example, the production of grains and fruits from the land and from trees, etc., etc. When nature is mistreated, nature restricts. So the land may produce less, trees may produce less as a response to material nature being mistreated or not respected or, abused. And so nature responds. So in other words, there are different factors. You say the food value from how how modern science thinks of things. The food value of a mango during Satya Yuga, the food value of a mango during Kali-yuga, it's not the same because nature restricts. And abundance is when nature is properly regarded and treated. And ultimately, that's the material well-being follows spiritual well-being if the supreme personality of Godhead is sufficiently respected and more than respected, served and worshipped, then the energy, material energy and spiritual energy acts upon the living entities differently. So in other words, there's different factors that have to do with shortened duration of life besides this one factor. That's what I meant to explain. And it's difficult for people who are going away to do a U-turn and go back. It's difficult because they made up their mind, or they're already conditioned by the modes of nature and by their karma to go in the direction that they're going in. And moreover, they're attached to whatever that is, thinking that is right. That is where happiness is. And so I'm going to do that because I want happiness. And somebody comes along and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Excuse me, but there's no happiness down that trail." I'm sorry, but I'm going down that trail. Or they don't just ignore. Like, nice example. The one of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan was Krishna said he was hungry. No, Krishna's not hungry, but Krishna said he was hungry. So he sent the cowherd boys on a mission to the brahmanas that were performing a yajna to deliver the message to the brahmanas: Krishna's hungry. Can you provide something for Krishna? And when they heard the cowherd boys, what did they do? They didn't even respond. They didn't even acknowledge them and that Krishna's hungry. No, Krishna's not hungry. But that response was their response. So they came back to inform Krishna what the response was. It was like silence. They just ignored us. Krishna smiled knowingly because he knew that would be the case. And this is, previous age. This is Vrindavan. They just ignored him. The cowherd boys so Krishna said, "Go to the wives of those brahmanas." And immediately, so many preparations. So their hearts were oriented differently. And they're Brahmanes. They also know scripture, as does their Brahmana husbands. But their Brahmana husbands were proud of their learning and their ritual capacities and so many things. So much so that the purpose of all of those rituals and the mantras and the tantras and mudras and everything was obscured. The purpose was obscured. Their knowledge was covered. Maya yaparita jnana. And so they were offensive. And Krishna wasn't hurt, but because their wives became servants of Krishna, their husbands benefited just from what their wives were doing. That's the good news for those guys. Back to the scene. The scene is the forest of Naimisharanya, an auspicious place where, it's an interesting place. Naimisharanya is a place where Bhishma and Parshuram went to fight. Bhishma suggested, "Let's go to Naimisharanya. You want me to break my vow? I'm sorry, I'm not going to break my vow. If you insist that we have battle, let's go to Naimisharanya because that's an auspicious place. Whoever wins, it'll be auspicious. Whoever loses, it'll be auspicious. So let's go to an auspicious place." And that's where their battle occurred, the Kurukshetra battle. And it's not just battles, it's a good place for an auspicious location. The speaking of Bhagavad Gita and the speaking of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's an auspicious place. So it invokes an auspicious place, invokes an atmosphere of auspiciousness. However, in the age of Kali, inauspiciousness, that's what's being said in the purport. I'll read the sentence. In the Kali-yuga, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with faithlessness. The whole atmosphere is surcharged. So if they're in Naimisharanya, But looking around, let's say outside of Naimisharanya or anything other than a holy place, surcharged with faithlessness. Not nice. So people that understand the merit of faith and the merit of doing what they're doing, they're not concerned about their own stuff, their own material well-being, or even their spiritual well-being, because they're already situated properly. That's why they're there with sutta, inquiring from sutta, and inquiring in the way that they're inquiring. So that's the motivation, the inspiration and motivation for a spiritually successful person, or even a person who is trying to become spiritually successful, is not just their own salvation, but the benefit and well-being of people in general. That's what they're interested in. So that's the scene. Canto 1, Chapter 1. Naimisharanya is the place. Sutta is the speaker. The sages are asking. So this chapter 1, the whole chapter 1 is their questions. And they don't get answers until chapter 2 and chapter 3. But one by one, there's 6 principal questions. But here, this little section is haven't begun their questions yet. They're still approaching. Well, actually, one question has been asked: the ultimate and absolute good for all living entities. That's text 9. That's one of the 6 questions asked in chapter 1. But the main direction of so far in this chapter is the qualification of the speaker, sutta, qualification of the listener, the sages. That combination of qualified speaker, qualified listener, then real benefit can come. And with this, if it's diminutive on either the speaker's side or the listener's side, then the effect is going to be diminished. But neither is diminished. Sutta is the right person to hear from. They're the right persons to hear. So that combination is set and gives, the verses give, and the purports to those verses give what to look to: qualified speaker, qualified listener. And then there's those who are the intended recipients, is not just themselves, but prayena payukshakyabhya, celebrated verse. Kalavasman yugajana manda samanda matayo manda bhagya yupadracha. Heard that verse so many times from Prabhupada in his classes. It's true. It's Bhagavatam predicting, because the juncture of time is just at the cusp of the change of ages, from the previous age when Krishna was present, and then the next age when Krishna is absent. So Kali-yuga is coming, or it's the Sandhi, the junction between the two. Maharaj Pariksit is still alive, but due to be cursed, and he's preparing himself. Sutta's there. Sukadev Goswami came. So that's the scene. They're looking into the future, and they want to do something. They want to hear from Sutta, or one who is from Sukadev Goswami, or one who has heard from Sukadev Goswami. That point has been emphasized. It's disciplic succession kind of hearing. That's what they want. They're already learned fellows. They're sages. So it's not like they don't know the scripture. They want to hear from one who has heard from Sukadev what they already know, and to get further realization from Sutta. It's how sadhus interact with other sadhus. supposing you're not a sadhu yet. Maybe that some of us were not sadhus yet. We want to hear from sadhus and we get the message in disciplic succession. And if we can't go to Naimisharanya, then you make the place where you are like Naimisharanya. And how do you do that? By the process of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Archanam. Make your home Naimisharanya, where Krishna is worshipped and there's hearing and chanting, and that makes the place spiritual, as good as. I'm pausing because I'm thinking about Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, very empowered. Who knows who Bhakti Tirtha Swami was from his previous life, but he was like with rocket fuel. He advanced very rapidly in Krishna consciousness. And at a certain point in time, there was a court case that affected many, many, many temples because there was child abuse in some of our situations, and so everyone was sued. Everyone in ISKCON North America was sued. It's like head for the hills because they wanted everything. The lawyers and representing the children who had, whether they had legitimate claims or not, they're making claims. So they were very greedy. The lawyers were very greedy, and the kids were also greedy. And the courts were moving very much in favor of the children, rightly so. So, the knives were out and wanting as much of what the assets of the whole of ISKCON North America represented. During that juncture of time is when Bhakti Tirtha Swami had cancer. My understanding of one of the reasons, at least, of why that happened was he prayed to Krishna. Like one of Lord Chaitanya's associates who prayed to Lord Chaitanya, please deliver all the conditioned souls in the universe. And if you think they're too sinful, then transfer all those sinful reactions to me, and I'll bear all those sinful reactions. But deliver them. So Bhakti Tirtha Swami prayed like that. And that's at that time, he was diagnosed of having melanoma cancer, and he died of melanoma cancer. He's in his, before this case got settled, he decided that he wanted his samadhi built in Gitanagari, because if his samadhi was built in Gitanagari, then it would be sold. He was thinking, farm community, we don't want to risk our urban temples, so we may be willing to risk or put on the chopping block Gitanagari. So he had a samadhi built in Gitanagari so it wouldn't get sold. It was very explicit. And he understood this place is a holy place. Someone may want their samadhi in Vrindavan or Mayapur or Puri or some holy place. Place where Krishna is worshipped is a holy place. It's a holy place. And I'm just commenting how to make a place holy. How do you make your home a sacred place? Do the things that are done in the holy place, and that makes the place a sacred place. I heard twice Prabhupada's on the Vyasasan in Henry Street, Brooklyn, and then later the Henry Street, Brooklyn temple, Radha Govinda shifted to Manhattan. In both places, Prabhupada said the same thing. This temple is not in Brooklyn, it's in Vaikuntha. This temple is not in Manhattan, it's in Vaikuntha. Why? How could he make that statement? Pretty bold. Yet the address is Brooklyn, the address is Manhattan. Because here the hearing and chanting and worshiping of Krishna go on day and night. That's Vaikuntha. So you can create a Vaikuntha atmosphere, and as good as, at least in principle, as good as the natural holy places. The holy places are maintained by that hearing and chanting. Otherwise, they become obscured, and that happens. Doesn't mean the holy place is no longer holy, but the holiness becomes obscured or covered. And how to access the holiness of a holy place is the hearing and chanting. Same. Make your home Vaikuntha. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 10. The perils of the age of Kali. You have something? You're forced to why? Relatives? Expectation of others? Okay. You want to know what happens to you or somebody like you who's in this social expectation thing, and you don't want to offend, on the other hand, you don't want to do. So, what happens if you, in your mind, offer everything to Krishna? What's the consequence for you? That's what you want to know. Okay. A few things. Those that have their expectation of you to do the karmakanda thing, karmakanda ritual, depending upon the persons who have that expectation of you, you could perhaps negotiate that rather than do it that way, we can worship, but let's do it this way. Because there's a Vedic way of making offerings to devas and devis that's Vaishnava, respecting them. That's so it's the priest or the one performing the yajna may know how to do that. They may not, but they may know how to do that. And then it's not mix. It's bhakti. Supposing that's not negotiable, then minimally, the implication for you is you don't take. I would not recommend that you take the prasad that's offered to the demigods and think it's Krishna prasad because it's not. And that's me. Now, if you don't want to offend, but you just, you smile. And you don't take that prashad. But there depend. So then there's maybe something in between where, yes, in your mind you recognize I'm here, and the ritual is being done, and these persons who are being propitiated by the brahmanas, and I don't know all the mantras, so I don't know who they're propitiating and how they're doing it. I don't understand all the mantras anyways. But in my heart, they're representatives of the supreme person, and my worship goes to the supreme person, recognizing that what's going on here is they're being respected, but ultimately so you're participating in a function where your consciousness is right, and the priest may not get it completely right, but that's okay. You can participate in the function with the consciousness of this is ultimately the bhokta of all yajnas is Krishna. This is meant for him. The priest and the participants may not be thinking it's for him, but it's for him. And then comes the eating. There may be alternative procedures, but at least what I would do is you hold your ground, you smile, bring some prasad with you in your bag, and pop some prasadam and say I brought my own or something. So you're not just there with your arms across your chest saying, "No way am I going to eat this stuff." You put something on a plate and I brought my own. And they'll say, take some of this. You smile. I brought my own. That's okay. Thanks, but no thanks. Not disrespectful. And they may be irritated by that. Who knows? But that's okay. That's my recommendation. There may be other recommendations. That's mine. Anything else? Yes. No. It's not. It's well-being. Material well-being follows spiritual well-being. Like a shadow follows the object that casts the shadow. Material well-being is a shadow. It's not substance. It's a shadow. Abhas. Shadow or reflection. So one who wants material well-being, the intelligent person understands this is a reflection of the object that's casting the reflection. So that me invest in spiritual well-being. Not that I necessarily must trash the whole idea. I have a body. I have dependents. I have to look after them, etc., 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 etc. I have considerations. I have to be responsible in my everyday worldly activity. That's the shadow. Let me see to the spiritual well-being, because then material well-being will follow. It's not the same, but it's similar to dharma, artha, kama. The dharma is followed because from dharma comes artha, and from artha comes kama. So if I want kama, I want artha, do your dharma. The material well-being follows the spiritual well-being. Be a dharmic person and don't deviate from dharma. Then there's paradharma, and that's the ultimate material well-being. which means ultimate material well-being means the termination of the cycle of birth and death. Even on the road between now and the end of this body, there may be bumps in the road. That's okay. I know where I'm going. And those that don't do paradharma, they don't know where they're going. The material well-being may or may not happen. There's the expectation, but it doesn't always happen like that. The expectation is elevation and prosperity in this and then the next. Urdhvam gachanti sattvasta. Go to the sattva realm, the heavenly realm, because I'm doing my dharma nicely and avoiding adharma. But you don't know. You may make mistakes that you're not even aware of, and there's consequences. It's not canceled. With bhakti, it's canceled. Supposing you make a mistake and you're a sincere, maybe not perfect, but a sincere bhakti practitioner, and there's some mistake. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? He corrects the mistake. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. He corrects the mistake. He covers your backside, as they say, and restores you to your rightful position. You may have regret, etc., but it's not like you get spanked because you did some adharma by mistake, unknowingly. It's like this description in Krishna book where a very generous man was giving away cows, and he gave a cow to a Brahmin, and the cow wandered back into the herd. Then he gave the cow away again to somebody else, and the Brahmana said, "I want that cow, that one. No, I'll give you 10 cows. No, I want that one." He had the consequence because it's just on the material platform. But if you make a mistake unintentionally, but a mistake can happen, Krishna covers. It's not true for karma kanda. You're accountable for, you get the profit and the loss, elevation, degradation, and there's so. That answer your question? Okay. You have something? No. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki? Jai.